then you might as well pitch the address for the recordings.
Yeah, so these recordings are on a YouTube channel, Seattle Intergroup YouTube channel. So if anybody's interested in subscribing to the channel, there's lots of other really interesting things on there. There's interviews from people who got sober in Seattle. There's other tradition studies that we've done. There's sponsorship workshops. And all the Seattle group speakers, most of the Seattle group speakers are also on the YouTube channel. So it's just got a lot of interesting information. So go ahead and check it out. Again, this is the third legacy tradition study at Seattle Intergroup, and we're going to open this meeting with the Serenity Prayer. God,
grant me the serenity to accept the things we cannot change, courage to change the things we can, and wisdom to know the difference.
Thanks very much. And I am going to turn this meeting over to Stephen, who has so graciously agreed to chair.
Thanks, Lara. I'm Steve, alcoholic. And again, thank everyone for showing up tonight. This will be our third meeting, as Lara said, and I've sure learned a lot from the first two. And the format has been, we have 3 10-minute speakers on tradition 3, and then the rest of the time we divide up amongst ourselves. And the way it's been going the first couple times, which seems to work out fine, is we're not too worried about crosstalk. If somebody has something to say, they just say it, and we haven't any problem with that yet. So I'm really, really honored to introduce our first speaker, who is a legend in my mind, Astrid.
Oh. See, I didn't know that was going to be me. All right. Hey, my name's Astrid. I'm an alcoholic. Hey,
Astrid.
And I guess since I'm going first, I will go back to the beginning. So I'm going to be sharing out of this book, which it doesn't look like this if you go to buy it now, but it's The Language of the Heart. And I'm going to check my watch too. So for anybody who doesn't know, The Language of the Heart is articles that were printed in the Grapevine, written by Bill Wilson. And so it's got a lot of really interesting things in there, but he did do Grapevine articles on the traditions back in the 40s before we had adopted them. He kind of was still kind of formulating things, and so sometimes as you're reading these, sometimes you can see that he's figured it all out and he's got the wording for the tradition already, but sometimes not. So to me, it's really interesting to just kind of see what his thinking was and where he was at when he was going through this stuff. So I'm going to just read and comment the way that I do, and I'm going to watch my watch, so I'll quit on time. So this article was published in the February 1948 issue of the Grapevine. And Bill Wilson says, the third tradition is a sweeping statement indeed. It takes in a lot of territory. Some people might think it too idealistic to be practical. It tells every alcoholic in the world that he may become and remain a member of Alcoholics Anonymous so long as he says so. In short, Alcoholics Anonymous has no membership rule. So that's the main kind of focus that he had in the beginning. He, we've read all through, particularly in the 12 and 12, about all of the people sending in all of their rules and how it just got to be too crazy. And without me telling the story, they just decided they didn't want to have any rules. So that's the thing. AA has no membership rules. And Bill says, why is this so? Our answer is simple and practical. Even in self-protection, we do not wish to erect the slightest barrier between ourselves and the fellow alcoholic who still suffers. So he's saying, you know, we need the doors to be open. We need to be welcoming those newcomers when they come in. We don't want to do anything that's going to keep somebody from feeling comfortable enough to walk in the door. So he says, we know that society has been demanding that he conform to his laws and conventions, right? So as drunks, we were constantly being told, you know, what we needed to do to be okay. The essence of his alcoholic malady is the fact that he has been unable or unwilling to conform either to the laws of man or God. If he is anything, the sick alcoholic is a rebellious nonconformist. And I, you know, in my book, had to underline that because heck, I sure can identify with that. And he says how well we understand that. Every member of Alcoholics Anonymous was once a rebel himself. Hence, we cannot offer to meet him at any halfway mark. We must enter the dark cave where he is and show him that we understand. I love that. Says we must enter the dark cave where he is and show him that we understand. You know, I think that, I mean, I got sober, you know, in the time when we were going out and doing 12-step work, and we were entering dark caves. So, and I think we've got some restrictions now on, you know, on what we do. But this absolutely just hits home that nothing was going to, you know, and I think about some of my sponsors who were doing 12-step work, you know, long before I got sober, and, you know, some of the places they went and some of the stories that they told me, you know, that it was about, you know, really carrying the message to the alcoholic who still suffers, and that there wasn't going to be anything to keep us from doing that. I'm seeing my time moving, so I'm going to maybe skip some of this, but go back and find this book and read it. But he does go, the next paragraph here says, so when he asks, are there any conditions? We joyfully reply, no, not a one. When skeptically he comes back saying, but certainly there must be things that I have to do and believe. We quickly answer, in Alcoholics Anonymous, there are no musts. And I know that's debated, and that's all right. But in this article, he says there aren't any. Cynically, perhaps, he then inquires, what is this all going to cost me? And we're able to laugh and say nothing at all. There are no fees and dues. Thus, in a brief hour, is our friend disarmed of his suspicion and rebellion. His eyes begin to open on a new world of friendship and understanding. Our membership tradition does contain, however, one vitally important qualification. That qualification relates to the use of our name, Alcoholics Anonymous. We believe that any 2 or 3 alcoholics gathered together for sobriety may call themselves an AA group, provided that as a group they have no other affiliation. So that's an important little piece. A lot of people just read, I call it reading the traditions off the wall, and they think they get, you know, what they all mean. But when we dig deeper into the traditions, we find that, you know, the short version of the traditions, he left out a lot to try to make that the aesthetic on our AA walls. But it's really important that, yeah, we can only, you know, have 2 or 3 people getting a meeting, and we can call ourselves an AA group, but we cannot be affiliated with any other organization or any other activity. And maybe some of the other people, when they're using other literature, will go into more detail about that. He gives some examples that we can't call ourselves dry AA groups, wet AA groups, because there used to be a group down south that would drink beer at the AA meetings. They just only stayed away from hard liquor back when he was writing this stuff. So we can't have wet AA groups. We can't have Republican AA groups, communist AA groups. And I like this too. Few, if any, would wish our groups to be designated by religious denominations. We cannot lend the AA name even indirectly to other activities, however worthy. I'm just going to read this last paragraph because I love it. It says, let us of AA therefore resolve that we shall always be inclusive and never exclusive, offering all we have to all, save our title. May all barriers be thus leveled, may our unity thus be preserved, and may God grant us a long life and a useful one. This piece that he includes, that we want people to have, we offer everything we have except our name. And what that's about is that people can use, we want people to use the 12 steps, to help them however they think that they can be helped. We want you to have it. We want you to use it. But you can't use the name Alcoholics Anonymous. And so as these other 12-step groups have sprung up, my understanding, and I've heard other people say something else, but I was told that the second 12-step meeting, was Gamblers Anonymous. That's who took our program first, and they couldn't call themselves AA with a gambling problem, or they can't tack AA, Alcoholics Anonymous, onto their name. They can't use the AA name. And so I'll just kind of go to that. That's one of my concerns when people say that that they're a member of a group that is AA and something, that goes against this tradition right here that says you can't use our name. If you're a different 12-step program, you can't use our name, Alcoholics Anonymous. And that's what I have to say. My 10 minutes are up.
Thank you very much, Street. And now we're privileged to hear from Cindy.
Yay.
Hi. I'm just setting my timer. There we go.
We're
My
not going to be
name's-
real strict on the 10 minutes.
I am. Hi, my name's Cindy. I'm an alcoholic.
Hey, Cindy.
Cindy.
And first, I just want to say, when these guys asked me to do this, I was petrified, and I've been petrified for a bit. And it was probably one of the best experiences reading this. It was reading a bunch of things that I had not read before. So that said, the first thing, I don't know if this overlaps with what Austria
fine.
read. Just the first paragraph in the 12 and 12 under tradition 3. This tradition is packed with meaning, for AA is really saying to every serious drinker, you are an AA member if you say so. You can declare yourself in. Nobody can keep you out. No matter who you are, no matter how low you've gone, no matter how grave your emotional complications, even your crimes, we still can't deny you AA. We don't want to keep you out. We aren't a bit afraid you'll harm us, never mind how twisted or violent you may be. We just want to be sure that you get the same great chance for sobriety that we've had. So you're an AA member the minute you declare yourself. And I related that to my own experience, that I couldn't quit drinking on my own, that I kept getting worse, and I felt I was at my most pathetic end. AA took me in and embraced me and showed me how I could stay sober, and all I brought was my desire to quit drinking, and that's all you need. And so I was just really embraced and have started a whole new life. And I've kind of been doing this for 2 years now, and I'm starting to get a little confidence in myself that maybe I was the one that did this. And one of the things that this is getting ready to speak to you helped me to realize, oh no, it wasn't me, that I couldn't do it on my own. You know, I look a little better than I did the first time I came in. The first time I came into the meetings, I didn't have any front teeth. My chin was all cut up and from falling on the floor. And I was pretty much a mess. And now my teeth are all fine. And my chin's all healed up. And the one thing that I have is willingness to continue in my sobriety. And it's through my higher power as and all of you that make it so that I can do that. So as far as applying this tradition to my experiences, how I go into meetings. And you know, I do feel edgy, and when I smell alcohol in meetings, this is just little things that, you know, I feel uncomfortable. I feel uncomfortable when people don't follow the rules. And don't they know the rules? And if I think somebody's lying, or if they relapse over and over again, they're saying again and again, I'm on day 3. It's like on crosstalk, I hit on that. And then you know, things like feeling like I'm getting hit on, and violence in meetings. I answered the phones down here, and a gal called and was saying, you know, there's one person in our meeting who always rolls her eyes. It's making everybody else feel uncomfortable. How do you deal with that? You know, she was saying, I don't want her at my meeting. Well, if I had talked to her before I did talk to her before I studied for this, so I just kind of was nodding my head. And the safety in meetings. And also I've started seeing a woman who has had a stroke, and she really wants to go to a meeting, and as soon as I can get her to a Zoom meeting, I will. I can't take her out of where she is. But she's not gonna do things. She's not gonna follow the rules of the meeting, and that makes me edgy. And all I have to do is remember how people treated me. And I didn't follow the rules because I didn't know the rules. And I've relapsed before, so I've started my day count, and other people have been there with me, and they encouraged me. And I think that I hit on them. And so I just have to remember how I was treated and how everybody embraced me. And there was one thing, let me see. I don't know if that it's kind of out of context now, but I really like this quote. Except for I can't read my writing. Oh, it's unbelievable to me that all the power of the universe is available to care for me if only I have a desire to stay sober. No, and with that.
Thank you, Cindy.
Thanks, Cindy.
And we had a third speaker who at the last second had to cancel. So I'm gonna try and wing it for a couple of minutes to get some time. My name's Steve, and I'm an alcoholic. And thank you for what you had to share. And I wanted to talk about a different side of the third tradition. And my history in AA, I came in 1986, and I'm still here. And I don't have a drug story. The reason I don't have a drug story is because it made me so violently ill. Otherwise, I'd have matched up with any addict there is. So it wasn't for lack of trying. My body just said alcohol's enough. So I remember, to me, the old days, which they were to me, when I would hear objections. I was brand new, and I would hear objections when people would say, my name's Joe Blow, and I'm an alcoholic and addict. And there were meetings where people would take an objection to that. They said, nobody's saying you're not, but this is AA, and let's deal with that here. That's why we're here. And they would quote the third tradition and the fifth tradition usually, but the third tradition, it's interesting. It's got some history with the andas, and I say I'm a addict and an alcoholic, or however those andas work. And the little story that they put in our AA literature was this. It'll just take me a minute or two to read it. And on the AA calendar, it was year 2, so AA is brand new. In that time, nothing could be seen but 2 struggling, nameless groups of alcoholics trying to hold their faces up to the light. This before the name Alcoholics Anonymous even came in with Bill. A newcomer appeared at one of these groups, knocked on the door, and asked to be let in. He talked frankly with that group's oldest member, who's, supposedly Bill. He soon proved that his was a desperate case, and that above all, he wanted to get well. So it wasn't uncommon from reading some AA history to, I guess you'd call it qualifying, but telling your story a little bit to see if you were in the right place. So remember, year 2 before the name AA even came. But he asked, will you let me join your group, since I am the victim of another addiction, even worse stigmatized than alcoholism? You may not want me among you, or will you? And then again, just reading between the lines and what I've heard from other people, he was an heroin addict also. Okay, there was the dilemma. What should the group do? The oldest member summoned 2 others, and in confidence laid the explosive facts in their laps. Said he, well, what about it? If we turn this man away, he'll soon die. If we allow him in, only God knows what trouble he'll brew. What shall the answer be? Yes or no? At first, the elders could look only at the objections. We deal, they said, with alcoholics only. Should we sacrifice this one for the sake of the many? So went the discussion, while the newcomer's fate hung in the balance. Then one of the 3 spoke in a very different voice. What are we really afraid of? He said. What we are really afraid of, he said, is our reputation. We are much more afraid of what people might say than the trouble this strange alcoholic might bring. As we've been talking, 5 short words have been running through my mind. Something keeps repeating to me, what would the master do? Not another word was said. What more indeed could be said? And just one more paragraph. Overjoyed, the newcomer plunged into the 12-step work. Remember, this is year 2 before the even name AA came. Tirelessly, he laid AA's message before scores of people. Since this was a very early group, those scores have since multiplied themselves into thousands. Never did he trouble anyone with his other difficulty. AA had taken its first step in the formation of Tradition 3. Okay, so I found some real interesting thoughts that came out of that reading. He was welcomed into AA. He expressed the desire to stop drinking, and he wasn't trying to hide that he had other difficulties too. Supposedly heroin addiction, but I guess that part doesn't matter. And through, I guess it would be, we'd call it sponsorship now, or guidance, or whatever they call it back then, they dealt with the alcoholic problem that he said he had. And as a result, maybe thousands of people have been helped. And part of that story, and I think this could be real unpopular today, even part of that story was we see where the singleness of purpose is maybe one of the first times shown in AA, that AA, our society is to help other alcoholics. Not that we're unfeeling towards anybody else's troubles, but I'm paraphrasing this now, but in the AA literature, it says, we'd love to solve everybody's problems, but maybe we should stick with what we're good at. And so I've often thought of how about this? So many people are dually addicted. Nobody's denying that. Least of all me, even though I just identify as an alcoholic. But are we doing Alcoholics Anonymous or the people? Are we doing them a favor by almost incorporating that into our meetings? I'm Joe, and I'm an alcoholic and an addict. I mean, I'm an alcoholic, but I also got other problems that alcoholics can't help me with. But why stop there then? If that's helpful, an alcoholic and a horse thief, or all these other things. I think the history in AA, and Bill had written many times about singleness of purpose and how critical he thought it was. And yet it almost seems, and this could just be me too, it almost seems like, hey, you're old school or something if you just want to talk about alcoholism. That's old school. And maybe it is, I don't know. But I'll tell you what I've done with people I've worked with, and there's no doubt to me, because I've heard their stories about their alcoholism and their drug addiction. What I've done, because that's how I saw it done, was, hey, let's look at the alcoholism. Then when we get to page 164, we'll see if I can be helpful in some other sense. And by then, if they've done the work, they've had the psychic change and they know what's helpful for what program. So it's not denying that other people have other issues, but is AA, it certainly wasn't designed to help anybody but the alcoholic, but yet you can sound mean saying that. It's an interesting take. Okay, that's all I got to say about it. And this is the part where we like to open up to see if anybody's got any thoughts about the third tradition or a story they want to tell.
I'll share a few words. I'm Nancy, an alcoholic.
Hi, Nancy.
And thank you for what you shared, and you, beautiful, and Austri, as always. And I'm looking forward to hearing from you. But I liked what you said at the approach with someone who says, I'm an alcoholic and an addict or whatever, and will you work with me? And so, well, I'll work with you on the alcoholism. And by the time we're at 164, we'll see, if there's something else or another program, because that is non-exclusive. And our book says, that they describe God as always inclusive, never exclusive. And you read the same thing in Language of the Heart, that Alcoholics Anonymous hopes to adopt that same ideal, that we're not exclusive. And I think that is, when I first got into AA, people would say, look for the similarities, not the differences, because I think we have a tendency to look for the differences, just in life. We're sorting out, people that, well, I'm not like that. And, but this is the exact opposite of that. And just the last thing I wanted to say was something that I read in the Language of the Heart as well, is this paragraph, for Alcoholics Anonymous is saying, we have something priceless to give, if only you will receive. That is all. But to our new friend, it is everything. Without more ado, he becomes one of us. And that to me, that's tradition 3. He is one of us. Whatever they are, he's one of us. But I know that working with an alcoholic, in that particular form of addiction, is where we are most helpful. But still, they are one of us. It follows from our first tradition, the unity of Alcoholics Anonymous. That's all. Thanks.
Thank you, Nancy. I see some hands up on Zoom. Oh, I'm just kidding. I don't see any hands.
Jenny or Mike or,
She just unmuted herself, so.
Yeah,
Okay.
I'm Jenny. I'm an alcoholic.
Hey, Jenny.
A lot of good stuff I'm hearing. With the third tradition, I mean, when I was drinking, it got really bad to the point where I was in secure detox and treatment and outpatient, and my 2 young kids were taken away. I couldn't stop. I was drinking in the morning. I was taking the alcohol on my way to work, throwing it in the garbage at 1 a.m. p.m. I didn't want to drink. By 3 o'clock, I'd be at the liquor store getting new stuff. So it was out of control. And I was to the point where I couldn't live with it or without it. And eventually, I had to do some things for the courts to try and get my life back together and to get my kids back. And it landed me in AA. And I didn't really want to be there. I didn't care where I was, really. So, but eventually in time, I started listening to people in AA. And I soon did what they told me. I kept coming back. And the great thing about it, when I was drinking, it was that dark cave that you had mentioned earlier. That's where I was. I was drinking alone. I was drinking recklessly. And frankly, I didn't want to live anymore. And I was in that dark cave. I felt it well. And thinking that something terrible was wrong with me, right? And then when it's amazing, when I started to open up and listen to people in AA, they too, in their stories, I could hear the commonalities. I could hear their stories. And I'm like, wait a minute, I'm not the only one. And look at them now. They're happy. They're talking. They're having coffee. They seem like very decent, normal people. And I'm like, well, I could probably stay and stick around and hear more. And so I did. And it was the first time I really felt like I belonged. Like I found my way to people who could understand me and I could understand them. And that feeling of belongingness was, it was critical to my sobriety and to being accepted and to have something in common with another human being, understanding that pain and that terror and that despair and everything that alcohol does to us. So with that, I got a sponsor. I worked the steps. I stayed in AA probably for about 7 years, 6 or 7 years. And then life got busy. I ended up getting my kids back and I stayed sober. I'm still sober since 2008. So, and it's not by just me, it's by the grace of my higher power, who I call God. But I eventually life kind of happened where the kids are getting older. I had to go back to night school to get my degree back current, and I had to leave my home group. My classes were at night. You know, I can make every excuse in the book, but I just kind of drifted away, if you will. And then so it's been about 6 years since I've been back. I've popped into AA a few times over the past couple years, going through a lot, getting a divorce, and my mom passed away 3 years ago. And the kids are out of the house now, so they're in college. They turned out great. I'm pretty proud of them in spite of their mom being an alcoholic when she was younger. But the most important thing is that with Tradition 3, I knew I could come back. And I knew that the doors were open, that I didn't really shut it. I just kind of ventured away. It wasn't meaningful that, oh, I don't need AA anymore. It's just, okay, well, I'm stuck. I've got to work and I've got to go to school. I could have done better, because one of the parts that I realize now is that there's this part called service and there's this part called unity. And granted, I had my recovery and I had my higher power. I was missing two big pieces of the triangle and the circle. And in order for me to stay sober, I need to dive back into AA, and I need to be there for someone like me who's coming up, for the newcomer, to give them the hope that people gave me when I was first coming in the doors. And so with that realization, and now I have time and I have priorities, and I don't want to go back. I don't want to lose my sobriety, but I think in order for me to keep it, that I need to jump back in the program. So I did get a sponsor last weekend. I was having a rough time. I texted her, and she was free and she said yes. So we meet now weekly, and I'm going to get a home group. Same one I've been going to. It's just, I'm afraid of commitment, but that's just me. I always have been, but I know I need to do that. So, but it's been great. The Tradition 3, I read a little history too of how they had to go through all their lists of requirements, and yeah, it was horrible to hear that, and all the struggles they had back then in those days before. And it's a miracle that they made it work. And I think it was just simplicity. I've read the tradition, and it's like, wow, they knew what they were doing, and they saved many lives. So I'm sure my 10 minutes are up. Thanks for being here, and thanks for letting me share.
Thank you.
Thanks so much.
I'm Mike. I'm an alcoholic.
Hey, Mike, thanks for showing up.
Oh, it's good to be in this. I've heard about it. I've seen it in the flyer of some sort, and I've just always wanted to come to these because we have one at our home group too, a tradition study. It's in the 12 and 12 book. We study that. Tradition 3, I'm assuming it's because you guys are doing it 1 month at a time, each tradition each month. So that's why you're on 3. Was that the reason? Yeah, okay.
That was just coincidence.
Oh, was it a coincidence? Oh,
No,
Well,
it's not.
no.
well, I'll tell you, I like Tradition 3 because and I'm grateful that it doesn't say that the only requirement for AA membership is a desire to stop drinking for the rest of your life. Because
Good one.
I really like the 1 day at a time thing. And for me, that's a good thing, because I can't see myself not drinking for the rest of my life. That I know that I don't want to drink anymore, but because I believe that I have alcoholism, I can trigger myself to thinking it's okay for me to drink. And that's why I've got a desire to stop drinking. So I like my membership in here. When I sometimes say to people, you know, they know that I'm going to go to a meeting and they ask me what it is, I'll sometimes say it's a spiritual fellowship that I go to, because it is. And but if they want to know any more, I'll tell them that I'm going to AA. And then they'll pretty much nod their head like, oh, it's about time. So I definitely like those 5, or what is it, the 5 words that one guy said, because I say that to a lot of my problems when I have difficulties in the day. What would the master do? You know, and that kind of like soothes it out a little bit for any kind of troubles that I have during the daytime. What would the master do? You know, and you think about that, and it's like it's an easy way of making things a little bit better if you want to have your own way, and you start thinking tradition 3, what would the master do? You know, because it's there for me. I hear a lot of when people come into AA. I did some drugs before too, but alcohol was my master. So I just say that I'm an alcoholic. I don't say and a, like what you were saying. Was it Steve? Yeah. And so I personally just say I'm an alcoholic. I could say and an addict, because I certainly like marijuana a lot too, but not as much as I did booze. So the traditions to me seem like I can see how it's intertwined, where each one can go off and go into another one. I think of when I think of tradition 3, I think of tradition 5 as far as shoemaker, stick to thy last. We want to stick to alcoholism, you know, and that's where, if you think of the history of it, in some of the history books of AA, it talks about the Washingtonians, how they were a group of drunks, but they decided to try to help the whole world to be a better place too, but they ended up not being able to do anything because of what they went through. And I think that was kind of like what the Oxford group was like then too. It was more of a Christianity group of people wanting to help everybody. So Bill and Bob came up with some, and the other, those that shared in, did a pretty good book on, a pretty good thing on the book. And then with the traditions, my gosh, it's amazing. So I'm I don't know. Not sure what else to say now. I'm glad that I came to this, and you'll probably see me more at it, because I like these kind of studies where you just kind of go off and you talk about how you're feeling about it then too, because you can learn so much more about when a lot of people share about what the particular thing is, like tradition 3. So thank you for doing this. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. And Lara.
Yeah, Lara.
My name's Lara. I'm an alcoholic.
Yeah, you are.
Lara.
I know, right? And you know, I like how all the traditions sort of fit together like a puzzle piece. I can see the correlation between 3 and 5, but I especially see the correlation between 3 and 1, and that is, you know, if we have a group of people that aren't really sure what it is they're dying from, then people who are dying from alcoholism aren't going to feel like they belong in an AA meeting. And so I think and because of that, I think it's super important to not have a room full of people who are and as whatever, right? It's important to me that my home group, that when somebody comes searching for an answer to a solution to their drinking problem, that they're going to hear the message of Alcoholics Anonymous. and not just some generic recovery message. That seems to kind of be at some meetings I've been to. And so I do think that the traditions checklist is super helpful. And there's 6 questions. I won't read them all. There's one though that was kind of touched on already. But number 2 says, is there some kind of alcoholic whom I privately or publicly do not want in my AA group? And sorry. You know, it's I've been a home group member of a number of groups, you know, in and around the Seattle area. And I've been in business meetings where we voted to kick people out of the place that we're having our meeting at. And there's always, you can't kick anybody out of AA. And I even felt that way too. I was like, what is happening? I had no idea that this could even be a thing that could happen. And when it talks about when it was first, it talks about it also in the 12 and 12N in Language of the Heart about how we don't care how even violent you are. You're welcome. You know, we want you to have the same chance that we all have, unless you walk into our meeting with a shotgun. You know, I mean, there's like there's lines that have to be drawn, and I've been in business meetings that have, you know, gotten restraining orders against people who are violent. There's not any group of alcoholics that are less important than one crazy drunk. So an individual is never more important than the unity of the group. And that's important. I mean, there's, you know, as of late, you know, there's always the new incarnation of the new alcoholic that's causing problems in the groups, right? And the unity of the group is important. And it's got, you know, it is a balance, you know, it is a balance. I've sat in meetings with people who have extremely violent histories, but because they're there and willing to go to any lengths to stay sober, they're welcome at the AA meeting. And because they're there and they have a surrender about them and are willing to do what it takes to get sober, then of course they're welcome in the Alcoholics Anonymous meeting. I've sat in meetings with people who are drunk and disorderly, and as long as they come, you know, they're talked to and maybe taken out of the meeting so that they're not disruptive to the meeting at the time. And if they're sober, they're welcome to come back, or if they can behave themselves in the meeting. And so, you know, every AA group worth its salt has had to deal with these issues, you know, and they're never easy to deal with because, you know, we want to be helpful to everybody, if we can, who has a desire to stop drinking. And sometimes that can look very, very unsavory. So I just wanted to focus on that question. The other 5 questions are interesting, you know, as far as you know, prejudice. I remember when I got sober, I went to a meeting, and there was a Black man that would come to the meeting. He'd been sober a very long time at that time. He got sober in the 60s, and he used to tell me about the time when he came to an AA meeting and they said that he was welcome, but that he couldn't drink the coffee. And I just never forgot that, but that he was still willing to go to any lengths to stay sober. And I'm grateful that, at least in the meetings that I attend, that race is not an issue, and or education or sexual identity or any of those other things that can lend themselves to prejudice, and therefore, you know, people carrying the message to the alcoholic who still suffers. So I'm grateful for Alcoholics Anonymous. I'm grateful for the forethought and the foresight that Bill Wilson had when you know, I don't want to say creating these traditions, but more like discovering these traditions. So thank you.
Thanks, Larry.
Thank you.
Thank you. And Larry, I can't see, there's some,
Bernice.
Bernice, can we hear from you?
Good evening, family. My name is Bernice, and I am an alcoholic. And
Hey,
I thank you
Bernice.
so much for this tradition meeting. I love traditions. I love history. I love the archives. And I love Alcoholics Anonymous because it lets me know I have someplace to belong. The 12 and 12 tells me no matter how grave your emotional complications, we still can't deny you AA. We don't want to keep you out. I love reading that because the program teaches me that people with grave emotional and mental disorders do recover if they have the capacity to be honest. And what I've learned in Alcoholics Anonymous is how to be honest with myself, my God, and another human being. And because of that, I get to stay sober one day at a time, as long as I'm willing to recognize that everyone who comes into Alcoholics Anonymous and calls themselves an alcoholic has the same right as I do to be there. They have been given the same gift of opportunity to recover from this disease that has no cure. And all is required is that we get honest, we be open, we be willing, and we follow some suggestions. And the suggestions that I get come from the literature. It comes from people sharing their experience, their strength. It gives me hope in the fellowship and in my life. And as an alcoholic, I need hope in my life. If I don't have anything else, I better have some hope, or else I will not make it one day at a time sober. The program of Alcoholics Anonymous tells me that no one can put me out. No one can keep me out. I'm an alcoholic when I say I'm an alcoholic, even if I'm lying. But I'm not lying because I'm a real alcoholic. Trust me on this one. I am a real alcoholic. If I put alcohol in my body, I become something that I do not ever want to become again. So I don't put it in my body. Instead, I stay where I'm wanted. And I am wanted in the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous because I have something that I can give to other people who don't have what I have at the moment. Maybe they do. Maybe they're sober too, because they've come through their own experiences of having to be rigorously honest with themselves and a power greater than themselves and another human being. And we can pass that on to whoever's there who doesn't. And we call that person a newcomer. So when the newcomer comes in and says, well, what are the rules here? Like our literature says, the only thing that we have as a rule is that you stay here if you want to be an alcoholic and say you're an alcoholic. Now, again, the rules don't say that you have to be an alcoholic. It says you're an alcoholic when you say you're one. So when a person comes in, says they're an alcoholic, I get to say, welcome to my family. I get to say, thank you for being a part of my family. I get to say to each and every one of you, thank you for being my family. Because without you, I don't have one, except for the human family, which can be kind of cruel at times. And we in Alcoholics Anonymous are made up of humans. But the one thing that draws us together is the fact that we have the literature that came from the people who had the grace to get something from the desperation that they were in. They had the grace to receive something from a power greater than ourselves. And that same grace carries us today. And I'm so grateful that the only requirement is a desire to stop drinking. So thank you for calling on me, and thank you for letting me share.
Thanks, Bernice.
Well, thank you so much, Bernice. And I'm sure we've all heard it said that a good meeting starts on time and ends on time, but I've also heard a great meeting ends a couple minutes early. So, Astrid, do you want to take us out?
Yes, I would love to do that. With the serenity prayer, I will. God,
God, grant me
me
the serenity to accept the things I cannot change,
the
courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. And next month, the third Tuesday of next month, fourth Tuesday, excuse me, we've got some exciting stuff on Tradition 4. You don't want to miss it.
All right.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.